Some family secrets should stay buried forever, but others, they burn inside you until they spill out, demanding to be told so they never happen again. My story's the kind that scorches your soul. Picture being trapped in a house with 15 brothers, frozen, not knowing what to do. Hey there, folks, I'm Mary Cooper, but everyone around here calls me Grandma Mary. I'm 78, born in February 1946 in a speck of a town called Pine Creek, Alabama, where the sun baked the earth and families hid behind high fences and even higher walls of silence. I grew up in an era when women had no say, kids had no rights, and men ruled like kings over their own little kingdoms. My story's about a family that looked picture perfect from the outside, blessed folks would say, but hid horrors behind closed doors that still wake me up in cold sweats. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and let me know your name so I can feel like we're chatting face to face. If this resonates, hit that like button and subscribe to Grandparents' Tales. Every click warms this old heart and gives me the courage to share these memories. I'm the daughter of Joseph Cooper, a farmer who owned land as far as you could see, with a big family that had folks green with envy. To outsiders, we were proof God rewards hard work and family values. But family? Sometimes that's just a fancy word for the worst kind of secrets. My dad was a towering man, broad shoulders, calloused hands, and a voice that commanded obedience without getting loud. His sharp eyes could spot a lie before you even thought it. Always in cotton shirts, a worn leather hat, and boots that thumped on the concrete floor, he announced his presence before he even walked in. Dad wasn't just my father, he was the iron-fisted patriarch of a sprawling household. Besides me, the only girl, there were 15 boys he called his sons, though not all were his by blood. It started when I was little. Dad had a thing about family duty. If a brother fell on hard times, a cousin lost their parents, or a relative couldn't care for their boys, he'd open our doors. Family helps family, he'd say. A real man doesn't let his blood suffer. So our house filled up. There were my 3 half-brothers from Dad's first marriage, John, Peter, and Michael. Then 5 boys he had with my mum after me, Anthony, Frank, Joseph Jr., Matthew and Stephen, and 7 cousins shuffled to us when their families broke apart for reasons no one explained to a kid like me. Our house was massive, like an old plantation mansion with 3 wings linked by long hallways and wraparound porches. The main wing had Dad and Mum's rooms, the living room, dining room, and a big kitchen where Miss Connie, our cook, fed nearly 20 mouths daily. The East Wing was for the older boys, where they had their secret talks, making decisions us women weren't privy to. The West Wing housed the younger ones, under the older boys' strict watch in a pecking order Dad set from the start. Me? I had a small room in the main wing near my parents, as was proper for the only girl. A white iron bed, my grandma's old hardwood wardrobe, and a window overlooking the courtyard, where chickens scratched, and I spent afternoons embroidering or helping Mum. My mum, Rose Cooper, was a tiny woman from Georgia who married Dad when I was 2. She was my stepmum, but treated me like her own. Quiet and always busy, tending the garden, overseeing cleaning, sewing for our army of men. She had strong hands that smelled of soap and lavender. She'd stroke my hair on quiet afternoons, her way of showing love. Rose never spoke of her life before Dad, like she was born the day she walked into our farm, the past erased. Our house ran like clockwork. Everyone knew their role, and nobody dared question Dad's rules. At 5 a.m. his bell rang on the porch, waking us all. The boys headed to the fields, herding cattle, feeding pigs, working the corn and bean crops that kept us fed. I stayed with Mom, learning women's work, cooking breakfast for 20, washing and ironing endless piles of clothes, tending chickens, watering the garden. It was a hard life, but I thought it was normal. I didn't know families could be different. Dad controlled everything, what we wore, what we ate, who worked where, even when we could stay up. No one left the property without his say-so. No visitors came without his approval. No one laughed too loud when he was around. His grip on me was tighter. I couldn't talk to the boys alone, couldn't step into the yard without Mom, couldn't wear anything he deemed improper, which meant any dress showing an ankle or not buttoned to the chin. A decent woman doesn't invite gossip, he'd say. My daughter will be decent, even if I have to break the legs of anyone who looks at her wrong. The boys ranged in age. John and Peter, both over 20, helped Dad run the farm like junior partners, allowed into town on Saturdays if they were back by dark. The middle ones, Michael, Anthony, Frank, 15 to 19, were rowdy, testing Dad's patience, dreaming of life beyond the farm but fiercely loyal to him. The youngest, 10 to 14, were my younger brothers and orphaned cousins, always scrambling to please the older boys, terrified of a misstep that had earned them extra chores, less food, or a lashing from Dad's belt. Words don't teach, pain does, he'd say, and we all knew he meant it. Our farm was an hour's drive from Pine Creek, on a dirt road that turned to mud in the rain and dust in the heat. We were cut off, a self-contained world with its own rules. Dad loved the isolation. Too many temptations in town, he'd say. Here, I know who comes, who goes, what everyone does. My family's safe from the world out there. Safe from the outside, maybe. But no one protected me from the world inside those walls, in the shadowed hallways, the locked rooms, the heavy silences when Dad left for town. It was a Friday in March 1960, just after my 14th birthday, when I learned that protection can be a lie. And sometimes the ones meant to keep you safe are the ones you should fear most. The Alabama summer was already brutal, the air thick even at dawn. Dad was grimmer than usual at breakfast, talking low with John and Peter about business in town, selling cattle to a man named Colonel Wilson and sorting land deeds at the county clerk's office. "I'll be gone all afternoon," he said, stirring his coffee. It was a typical Friday. He always handled weekly business then, leaving John in charge. But something felt off. The boys' glances, their hushed voices at the table. They knew something I didn't. After breakfast, Dad got ready to leave, and I felt a knot in my chest, like the air itself had shifted. Dad put on his best white shirt, new blue jeans, and the polished boots he saved for town. He slicked his hair with Brill cream, grabbed his hat, and strode to the porch where his blue Ford pickup waited. "John, you're in charge," he said, jingling the keys. "Handle any problems and keep an eye on the younger boys. No messes while I'm gone." What happened after he drove off changed my life forever. The pickup's engine roared, kicking up a cloud of Alabama red dust as Dad pulled away, same as he did every Friday. But that day, the sound hit different, like a bell tolling doom. We stood on the porch, watching the truck vanish down the dirt road. The silence that settled over the house wasn't the usual quiet. It was heavy, thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. Mama Rose slipped into the kitchen without a word, and I followed to help with the breakfast dishes. As we scrubbed plates, I felt eyes on my back, the boys watching me, sizing me up in a way that made my skin crawl. "Mama, can I go tend the chickens?" I asked, desperate for air. "Sure, Mary, but don't dawdle," she said. "We're baking bread for the week." I headed to the yard, trying to focus on gathering eggs, but the feeling of wrongness clung to me. The boys moved in clumps, whispering, falling silent when I passed. It was like they were in on a secret I wasn't allowed to know. About 2 hours after Dad left, I was in the chicken coop when Michael appeared at the door. My blood brother, 3 years older, always kind to me until that day. His eyes were different, cold. "Mary, we need to talk," he said, his voice low, nervous. "What's wrong, Michael?" I asked, my stomach knotting. "Come with me. There's something you need to learn." His tone chilled me. "Learn what?" I said, backing away, leaving the egg basket on the coop floor. "You're 14 now, Mary, old enough to know how women behave in this family." His words hit like ice water. I bolted for the house, but he grabbed my arm. Not rough, but firm enough to say I wasn't going anywhere. "No use running," he said. "Mama's busy and won't hear you. Even if she did, she knows this is part of your education." "Education?" I stammered. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see." He pulled me across the courtyard to the west wing, toward the younger boys' rooms. But we didn't stop there. He led me to a door I knew well but rarely opened, the storage room for old tools, corn sacks, junk. "Why here, Michael?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because this is where girls in our family become women." He opened the door and my breath caught. The cluttered room was gone. An old mattress lay on the floor, a curtain covered the small window, a space prepared for something awful. "Come in, Mary." "No, I don't want to." "It's not about wanting, it's about obeying." Footsteps echoed behind us. I turned to see John approaching, his face hard, followed by Peter, Anthony, Frank. One by one, my brothers and cousins formed a semicircle around the door. "John, what's happening?" I pleaded, my voice thin. "You're learning your place in this family, Mary," he said, "to serve the men who provide for you." "I don't understand." "You don't need to. Just obey." John pushed me inside, not hard, but enough to make me stumble onto the mattress. The door slammed shut, the sound like a gunshot. I sat trembling, trying to make sense of it. Outside I heard whispers, like they were planning something. Minutes dragged like hours. The door opened again, and Peter stepped in, closing it behind him. At 20, he'd always been a quiet big brother, but now his eyes were those of a stranger. "Stay quiet and do what I say, Mary," he said. "Peter, I want Mama." "Mama knows you're here. She knows what's happening. This is how girls in our family learn." "Learn what?" "You don't need to understand. Just obey." That's when it hit me. There was no escape. The brothers I'd grown up with had become something else, and this room was a trap, set just for me. Peter came closer, and I shrank into the corner of the mattress. My mind raced, trying to grasp how my protectors had turned into threats. "Please, Peter, I didn't do anything wrong." "You didn't. You just got to the right age." He crouched, grabbed my chin, and forced me to meet his eyes. "You're learning your first lesson as a woman in this family. Our word is law, and you're here to serve us." I tried to run, but he held me like I was nothing. Twice my size, twice my strength, he wasn't budging. "Shh," he whispered, like soothing a scared animal. "It's quick if you don't fight, worse if you do." That's when I understood. This room, this moment, this ritual. It happened every Friday when Dad left. I was the new piece in their sick tradition. What Peter did to me in that room, I won't detail. Some pain cuts too deep for words. When he finished, adjusting his clothes like it was nothing, I wasn't the same girl. "Michael's next," he said, heading for the door. "Scream or run, and it'll be worse next time." The door opened and closed. Peter left. Michael entered. And I knew this was just the start. One by one they came, not all 15. Some were too young, others stood guard to keep Mama Rose away. But there were too many for a 14-year-old to bear. Between each, I lay alone on that mouldy, sweat-soaked mattress, staring at the wooden ceiling, trying to comprehend how my world had turned to hell. During one break, I stumbled to the door, pounding softly. "Please let me out," I whispered. "I won't tell. I'll obey." John's voice came through. "Not done yet, Mary. A few more." I crawled to the window, seeing the curtain's true purpose, not to block light, but to muffle screams. No one outside would hear me, not even God. I grabbed an old towel, rolled it tight and stuffed it under the door, choking on tears as I silenced my own cries. That endless Friday afternoon, time wasn't measured by clocks but by dread, waiting for the next, praying for the last, clinging to the hope of Dad's truck roaring back. When I finally heard the Ford's engine, it was near dark, the sky bruised orange and purple. I lay broken on the floor, too drained to cry. John came in, helped me up, his voice falsely kind. "Now you know how things work here, Mary. Every Friday when Dad leaves, you go to that room," John said, his voice cold. "That's how it's always been for women in this family. That's how it'll always be. Tell Dad. He knows, Mary. Who do you think set this up? Folks, can you believe what I'm saying? Drop a comment. Tell me if you had brothers, what they were like. I read everyone, I swear." John's words rang in my head like a broken church bell. Dad knows. Who do you think built this room? Everything I thought I knew about family, protection, love, shattered like glass. I stumbled back to the main house, legs shaky, mind reeling. Mama Rose was in the kitchen, stirring a pot like it was any other day. When she saw me, she just nodded. "Go wash up, Mary. Change your clothes. Your dad'll be home soon, and dinner's got to be ready." No shock, no worry, just a nod, like she knew exactly where I'd been and why. In my room, I stared into the small mirror on my dresser. The girl looking back wasn't me anymore. Same face, but something was gone, stolen in that back room. At dinner, Dad came home, acting normal, asking about the day, praising Mama's cooking, talking about cattle prices and the drought. Just another family meal, except I couldn't swallow the food or the lie. "Mary, you're quiet tonight," Dad said, eyeing me across the table. Before I could speak, John cut in. "She learned some big lessons today, Dad, about responsibility, obedience." Dad nodded, approving. "Good. A woman's only a woman when she knows her place." That night, lying in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, I realised there was no escape. Dad was the law on this farm, and his law allowed what happened in that room. The week dragged in a haze. I went through the motions, helping Mama, feeding chickens, washing clothes, but my mind kept sliding back to that mattress, John's words, the dread of the next Friday. The boys treated me different now. Not cruel exactly, but their looks lingered too long at breakfast. A hand on my shoulder stayed too heavy. They'd whisper things only I'd catch, double meanings that made my skin crawl. Michael, my own brother, acted like I was his. "Mary, fetch me water to wash," he'd order. "Make my bed, comb my hair. You forgot my pants, wash 'em now." Like I wasn't his sister anymore, but something less, something to serve. Mama Rose saw it all and said nothing. I wanted to collapse in her lap, beg her to save me, but her words echoed. Go wash up. She knew. She'd always known. And somehow she thought it was right. The second Friday came like a death knell. I woke with a knotted stomach, barely ate, threw up from nerves, when Dad said he was heading to Huntsville for cattle business. Might be later than usual. My legs nearly gave out. Later meant more time in that room, more torment. This time I didn't pretend it wouldn't happen. I knew it was coming. Anthony fetched me, his usual cheer replaced by a coldness that mirrored Dad's. "Come, Mary," he said at the kitchen door. I followed, each step through the house I'd known forever now, feeling like a march to a guillotine. The room had changed, a basin with soap and water in the corner, a small mirror on the wall, an old chair for them to wait their turn. "You know how it works," Anthony said, shutting the door. I did. Peter first, then Michael, then the others. Hours of hell until Dad's truck roared back. But this time I paid attention during the gaps when I was alone. I studied their faces, their words, looking for cracks in their cruelty. By the third Friday I noticed something. Not everyone was eager. Some avoided my eyes, hands shaking like they were as trapped as me. Charlie, a 15-year-old cousin, was always last. When his turn came, he'd mumble excuses. Stomach hurts, too tired, heard a car. The others mocked him, called him weak, but John let it slide, maybe because Dad's return was close. On the fourth Friday, Charlie wasn't in line. Michael said he was sick, but I'd seen him in the garden that morning, fit as ever. The fifth Friday, same thing. Charlie sick again. When Frank checked his room, he was gone. "Probably fishing at the pond," John growled, annoyed. "Let it go. We're wasting time." That fifth Friday, in that room, as the nightmare repeated, I made a choice. I started planning. Charlie became my focus. Was he different? He was a cousin, not a brother, son of Dad's uncle who died in a mill accident. His mum had moved to Memphis, too broke to take him, so Dad kindly took him in. But was this house a home to Charlie or a cage? Did he join in out of fear, not want? Was he, like me, looking for a way out? That week I watched him closer. He kept to himself, ate in silence, eyes on his plate like he wanted to disappear. At night, while the boys laughed on the porch, he vanished. One Thursday, I woke to use the bathroom and saw him through the hallway window, sitting alone under the big oak tree, staring at the stars. His slumped shoulders weren't relaxed. They carried pain, like someone lost, searching for answers in the sky. When Dad announced he was off to Chattanooga for land paperwork the next Friday, my stomach twisted with the usual dread. But this time there was a spark of something else. Hope. A plan was taking shape in my head. When John came to fetch me for the 6th Friday, I didn't fight. I walked into that cursed room, lay on that familiar mattress and waited. But this time I was watching. Who came, who didn't. Peter first, as always, then Michael, Anthony, one by one, treating me like I was nothing, no feelings, no humanity. As the afternoon wore on, the sun dipping low, I noticed Charlie wasn't in line again. Frank went looking, came back worried. He's nowhere. His room, the garden, the barn, the pond, gone. John snapped, "Forget it. If he's dodging his duties, he'll answer to Dad." But I knew Charlie wasn't shirking. He was escaping the horror just like I wanted to. Lying there, staring at the ceiling of that room where my nightmare began, I knew I'd found my crack. Charlie was suffering, like me. Maybe he'd help me break this cycle. That week, I turned into a shadow, watching, plotting. I had to reach Charlie, but one wrong move could tip off John or the others, making things worse. I kept up my chores, helping Mama Rose in the kitchen, tending chickens, washing clothes, but every task was a chance to observe. Fetching firewood, I scanned for Charlie. Hanging laundry, I tracked his movements. Serving meals, I noted how he acted. He was an outcast among the boys, not openly cruel, but they gave him the worst food, the hardest jobs, left him out of their jokes. He wasn't one of them, and it wasn't an accident. Something about him rattled them. Tuesday morning, I got my chance. Mama sent me to the pond for laundry water, and there was Charlie sitting on the bank, feet in the water, staring into space. "Hey, Charlie," I said, dipping my bucket. He jumped like he'd been caught stealing. "Hi, Mary, I was just leaving." "No need," I said, "and pond's big enough for us both." He gave me a look, like kindness from family was foreign. We sat in silence, me filling the bucket slowly to stretch the moment. "Charlie, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you like it here?" His eyes widened, like I'd touched a live wire. "Why are you asking?" "Just wondering." "Must be tough being away from your mum." Tears brimmed, and he looked away. "Sometimes I dream she'll come get me," he whispered. "But she can't even afford a bus ticket." "If you could leave, would you?" He met my eyes, wary. "Why are you asking this, Mary?" "No one's listening, just us." He went quiet, then barely audible said, "I'd run. Today if I could." "Why?" "You know why." That's when I knew. He understood the Fridays, the back room, the horror. More importantly, he wanted no part of it. "Charlie," I said, my voice shaky, "have you ever gone in there when Dad's away?" His face flushed and he shook his head hard. "John says it's part of being a man in this family, but I can't. It's wrong, Mary. What they do to you, it's not right." Relief hit me so hard I nearly collapsed. I'd found someone who saw it like I did, who could be my ally. "What do you do when they call you to that room?" "I hide, say I'm sick, slip into the woods, anything to avoid it." "And they don't get mad?" "They do. John says he'll tell Dad I'm weak, useless, says Dad might kick me out." "You scared of that?" "Yes and no. Scared because I got nowhere to go, but sometimes anywhere's better than here. I finished filling the bucket, but stayed put. This was too big to cut short. Charlie, if I tell you something, will you keep it secret? I swear. I'm planning a way out, but I can't do it alone. I need help. Someone inside the family who knows what's happening, who they trust but who doesn't agree with it. You mean me? Yeah. He fidgeted, torn, weighing the danger. If they find out we talked. They won't. We'll be careful. What do you need me to do? Nothing yet. Just know I'm counting on you when the time comes. What's the plan? I don't know exactly. Something to expose them, force Dad to stop. He knows, Mary. He built that room. I know, but him knowing in secret's one thing. It going public, the town hearing, that's different. Dad cares about his reputation. Charlie nodded slowly. He'd lose it if outsiders knew. So, you in? He took a deep breath like he was jumping off a cliff. Yeah, I can't live like this knowing you're hurting and I'm doing nothing. I hefted the bucket and started back, but turned to him. Charlie, we act normal, like regular cousins. No hints we're working together. Got it? How'll we talk? I'll figure it out. We built a secret system. I'd leave a small stone on the kitchen windowsill to signal a meeting at the pond after supper. He'd tie a blade of grass to the chicken coop fence if he needed to talk. Risky, but it worked. In those quiet talks, our plan took shape. Vague at first, just ideas about exposing the truth. Then, one Thursday, Dad came home with a gadget. A battery-powered tape recorder for his business deals. Modern technology hitting the country, he bragged, showing it off. I'll catch every word of my negotiations. That little device was a revelation. Small, quiet, able to record clear voices. It was perfect. That night, I left a stone on the windowsill. At the pond, Charlie saw my excitement. I've got a plan, I said, barely containing it. It might actually work. I told him about the recorder, how we could hide it in the back room to catch the voices, the orders, the sounds, proof of the horror. Then what? He asked. You give it to Dad. Say you found it by accident, heard the noise, didn't know what was happening. Act shocked. Why me? Why turn in my own kin? Because you're different, Charlie. You've got a conscience. When Dad hears that tape, hears his secret could get out, he'll panic. You think he'll stop it? He won't have a choice. Dad's reputation meant everything to him. If that recording got out, he'd do anything to keep it quiet. Charlie mulled it over, picturing the plan. When do we do this? He asked. Next Friday, I said. Dad's going to Huntsville again, so he'll be gone longer. Plenty of time to hide the recorder, capture everything, and get it out before anyone notices. Where do we hide it? Under that old chair in the corner, close enough to catch every word, but tucked away where no one'll see. What if they find it during, They won't. They're too caught up to notice details, and that room's always dim. We left the pond with our roles set. Charlie would sneak Dad's recorder without raising suspicion. I'd hide it in the room at the right moment. Then Charlie would hand it to Dad, acting like he stumbled on it by accident. It was a dangerous plan, full of ways it could go wrong, but it was our only shot to end the horror that had taken over my life. It was our chance to turn one of the family's monsters into an ally, using their own rules against them. Friday came, and when Dad said he was off to Huntsville, my heart pounded with equal parts dread and hope. I knew I'd suffer again, but it might be the last time. The recorder was tucked in my blouse, warm against my skin. Charlie had swiped it the night before while Dad was distracted, talking crops with Mama Rose. As the Ford's engine faded down the dirt road, I steeled myself to act. When John came for me, my pulse was so loud I thought he'd hear it. Dad's taking longer today, he said, leading me through the hallways. Plenty of time to teach you, right? His words chilled me, but confirmed we'd picked the perfect day. More time meant more evidence. In the back room, I took a deep breath and stepped inside. While John turned to talk to someone outside, I crouched by the chair in the corner. With moves I'd rehearsed in my head 100 times, I slipped the recorder from my blouse, slid it under the chair, and switched it on. "What are you doing down there?" John asked, turning. "Dropped a button," I lied, standing fast. "Got it." He didn't blink. Why would he? To them, I was just a thing. No thoughts, no schemes. Their underestimating me was our plan's salvation. The hours that followed were the same hell. Peter first, then Michael, Anthony, Frank, Joseph Jr., Stephen, some older cousins. Each word, each cruel command was caught by that tiny device. Peter started with his usual smug tone. "Today, Mary, you'll learn what a real woman does to keep men happy." Michael's words cut deeper, his verbal cruelty almost worse than the rest. "You're here to serve us, Mary. Dad raised you for this, our property, our fun." Every phrase was a confession, etching their guilt onto the tape. Even Manuel, my 16-year-old brother, joined in. "I'm sorry, Mary," he whispered. "John says if I don't, he'll tell Dad I'm weak. You know what Dad does to weaklings." His apology hurt more than the act. It proved they knew it was wrong, but did it anyway. The hours dragged, marked by faces coming and going, but this time hope kept me going. I knew this could be the end. When Dad's truck finally rumbled up the road at dusk, the room glowed orange through the window's curtain. John came in, giving his usual warnings. "Keep quiet, Mary. Dad knows this happens. He wants it this way. Try to change it and it'll be worse." When he left, I waited, listening for footsteps. Alone, I crawled to the chair, grabbed the recorder, still warm, still running, and turned it off. With shaking hands, I tucked it back in my blouse and slipped through the empty halls to my room, hiding it deep in my underwear drawer. It was our weapon, proof of years of terror. At dinner, I played the quiet, obedient girl, like I'd just helped Mama all day. Dad bragged about his Huntsville deals, better cattle prices, new contacts. "A good day," he said, slicing Mama's roast. "Our family's thriving, thank God." If only he knew what his absence had cost his daughter, but soon he would. That night I left a stone on the kitchen windowsill. After lunch Saturday, Charlie met me at the pond, his eyes wide. "Did you get it?" he asked. I nodded, pulling the recorder from my blouse and placing it in his hand. It felt too small for the weight it carried. "It's all there, every word, every voice, every awful thing." "Now you do your part," I said. "Tomorrow morning, early, before Dad leaves, say you found it in the yard, got curious, listened, act horrified. What if he suspects me? He won't. You're just the poor cousin he took in out of pity. He'd never think you planned this." Charlie pocketed the recorder, but doubt clouded his face. "Mary, what if it backfires? What if he gets madder?" "It'll work," I said with a certainty I barely felt. "Dad loves his reputation more than his power here. If he knows this could get out, he'll stop it. And me? What happens after I give it to him? You'll be the hero, the kid who found something awful and told the family's law. He'll see you differently. And you?" I didn't want to face that question. Would Dad see me as a victim or a traitor? "I'll be okay," I lied. "The important thing is this ends." Sunday dawned different, like the air knew everything was about to change. I woke certain that by nightfall my life would never be the same. By Sunday's end, my life would change. Either freedom if our plan worked, or a deeper hell if it failed. At breakfast, I watched Charlie. He was twitchy, pushing food around his plate, avoiding eyes. But when our gazes met for a split second, I saw resolve. He was ready. After breakfast, as Dad sipped coffee on the porch, flipping through a worn newspaper from town, Charlie stood, his face serious. "Mr. Cooper," he said, voice shaky, "can I talk to you? It's something big I found." Dad looked up, surprised. Charlie rarely spoke to him directly. "What is it, boy? Out with it." "It's private, sir. Serious." Dad folded the paper, eyeing him. Something in Charlie's tone hooked him. "All right, Inside, my office. They went in, and I stayed on the porch, pretending to toss feed to the chickens, every nerve straining to catch their voices. Dad's office was at the back, but I picked up scraps. Charlie, nervous, explaining how he found the recorder in the yard. Dad, first annoyed, then quiet, a heavy silence stretching nearly half an hour. I knew he was listening to that tape, hearing his sons and nephews confess their crimes in that back room. When voices returned, Dad's was low, controlled, but simmering with rage. Charlie's sounded lighter, like a burden had lifted. Footsteps thumped closer. Dad stormed out, his face a mask of fury I'd never seen. Not just anger, but the look of a man whose empire was cracking. Charlie followed, pale but steady, giving me a tiny nod. It had worked. "John!" Dad's shout shook the house. "Get here now!" John ran from the east wing, shirt half open, hair messy like he'd been napping. Seeing Dad's face, his own drained of colour, a boy caught in trouble. "What's wrong, Father?" Dad didn't answer, just stared with those piercing eyes, like he was seeing his eldest son for the first time. The silence was so thick even the birds went quiet. "Office!" Dad growled, his voice scarier than any yell. "Get Peter, Michael, Anthony, Frank, everyone, now!" John opened his mouth, but Dad's glare shut him up. He scrambled to fetch the others, and soon the house was chaos. Boys spilling in, confused but sensing trouble. I stayed on the porch, scattering feed, watching. Charlie vanished, likely hiding to avoid suspicion. Mama Rose appeared at the kitchen door, wiping her hands on her apron, worry creasing her face. "Mary, come inside," she said softly. "When your father's like this, we stay out of the way." But I couldn't miss this, the moment I'd dreamed of for months. Finally, someone with power would face the monsters who hid behind brotherly smiles. "I'll be right there, Mama," I said. She gave me a strange look but went inside. She'd always stayed out of men's business, even when it was about me. From the office, voices rose, low at first, then sharp, tense. Dad spoke long, the boys' replies short, panicked. A loud thud, a fist on the table, then Dad's voice louder than I'd ever heard. "Liars, all of you, filthy liars!" The silence after was worse, the whole house holding its breath. Then chaos, shouting, overlapping voices, my name tossed around with curses, proof they knew they'd been caught. The office door slammed open, hitting the wall. John stumbled out, face red, eyes scared. Peter and Michael followed, looking like men who'd been torn apart, not by fists but by words sharper than Dad's belt. Dad appeared, clutching the recorder like a loaded gun. "You'll learn what happens when you disgrace this family," he roared. What came next was unlike anything I'd seen. Dad, always calm and in control, unleashed a calculated fury. He called all 15 boys to the courtyard, including Charlie, who played confused. Mama Rose and I watched from the porch, but Dad summoned me. "Mary, here," he said, pointing beside him. "You'll see this." He was shaking, not from fear, but rage so deep it vibrated through him. He held up the recorder. "Know what's on this? Your voices, every vile word, proof my own sons turned into animals behind my back." John tried to speak, but Dad's glare silenced him. "You thought I was a fool?" he spat, pacing like a general before traitors. "Thought you could touch my daughter in my house and I'd never know." Michael stammered. "Father, we can explain—" "Explain what?" Dad's shout set dogs barking a mile away. "You shamed this family, my name, your ancestors, sneaking like rats." I realised then. Dad wasn't mad about what they did to me, but that they did it without his say-so. It was about his control, not my pain. "John," he said, pointing, "you were in charge. You were supposed to keep order. Instead, you led this." John mumbled. "I thought you knew. Thought it was normal." "Normal?" Dad stepped toward him, and John, 22, shrank like a kid. Normal is respecting my rules, asking permission, keeping this family's honour. Then came the reckoning. Things changed today, Dad said. John lost all eldest son privileges. No town trips, no farm decisions, no authority. Peter, Michael, Anthony and Frank were demoted to grunt workers. Sun up to sundown, Dad said. You eat last, sleep on the floor if I say so. You'll learn respect the hard way. The bigger blow came next. You'll never speak to Mary again, never look at her, never share her air. He turned to me, and for the first time in months I saw a flicker of something like care in his eyes. Not love, but acknowledgement I was a person, not property. Mary, you'll get a new room by ours, with a lock. If any of these dogs come near you, tell me and I'll break their necks. Then, to my shock, he turned to Charlie. You did right, boy. Showed guts when these cowards showed none. You're my right hand now, helping me keep order. Charlie flushed, nodding, our eyes meeting briefly, both stunned at how this unfolded. Dad wasn't done. To make sure you never forget what happens when you defy me, he said, storming to the back room. He returned with a kerosene can. Burn it, the mattress, the chair, everything, then smash the walls to dust. Watching that room burn was like watching my nightmares go up in flames. The fire ate the walls where I'd suffered, turning terror to ash. I felt a piece of my soul break free. In the days after, Dad rebuilt the family's rules. The guilty boys were stripped of status. Younger cousins, too young to have joined in, got new responsibilities. Meals were silent, John, Peter and Michael eating like whipped dogs. Charlie sat by Dad, learning farm work, while I ate without feeling hunted. Mama Rose never spoke of it, like she'd woken to a new world and just accepted it. Maybe she was relieved it was over. Dad took total control, setting new schedules, tighter oversight, never leaving without ensuring his grip held. He'd learned his absence nearly cost him his empire. For me, it was a rebirth. I could walk the house without fear, sleep without nightmares, wake on Fridays without dread. The sound of Dad's truck was just a truck again. Charlie became my quiet guardian. We never spoke openly of our plan, but a bond held us, two kids who'd risked everything. From outcast cousin, he became Dad's trusted hand. His life changed as much as mine. When I married and left the farm years later, Charlie told me Dad never again let so many men live under one roof. He got stricter, always present, never delegating power. John, Peter and Michael stayed on as workers, never regaining trust, a lifelong sentence. Looking back, our victory wasn't perfect. Dad didn't stop it because he saw the wrong in it, but because his control was challenged. Still, I was free. That plan, that strength I found, changed me forever. I learned even in the darkest moments, there's a crack in the wall, an ally where you least expect, a way to turn your prison into your salvation. Folks, thank you for hearing me out. In a world where attention's short, it means the world. If you've made it this far, comment courage so I know who's with me. If this story stirred you, hit that like button and subscribe to Grandparents' Tales. Sharing these memories gives me strength, and maybe it'll help someone else in their own hell. Life's taught me there's always a way out, always hope, always a chain to break. Sometimes from your own heart, sometimes with an unexpected friend. Never stop looking for it. You're stronger than you know, and no matter how dark it gets, there's a